how to paint the Under the Sea Angelfish painting. I'm using a 12 by 16 inch canvas for this. You can use any size. And I'm going to start with the three colors: cobalt turquoise hue, titanium white, Mars black, and a 3/4 inch flat brush dipped in the water and pat dry. We're going to paint the entire ocean background first, and that will start with the darker color, the phthalo blue. So I'm going to dip it in the phthalo blue. And when I paint this background, it's going to go in curves. So instead of going left and right horizontally, I'm going to paint in this direction in a curve. So what's happening is, this is the darker color, this is the phthalo blue, and it is the bottom of the ocean, so it's darker. And what we're going to do is we're going to eventually blend in the turquoise, and then it's going to turn into light turquoise, and then at the very top it's going to be almost white. So it's going to be a gradient of dark to light, and the direction is going to all be in a curved direction. So I'm just filling in this bottom area with the phthalo blue. And on the left and right, I'm going up about 6 inches, give or take. It's probably more like 5 inches. So I'm going to load my brush in the cobalt turquoise hue, and I'm just going to shorten this and call it turquoise from now on. And so I have my brush, it's double loaded in the phthalo and the turquoise, and I'm going to paint that turquoise. I'm going to do wet on wet blending. So I'm painting over the phthalo blue, and it's blending with the turquoise. So I'm just kind of gently going over that area where the two colors meet and allowing the colors to blend together on the canvas, and then I'll drag a little bit of the turquoise down into the phthalo blue just to get it to blend. And to blend, you just simply paint over it and allow the colors to blend on the canvas. And then I'm going to continue. So I'm still going in that curved direction, and I'm going to work my way up the canvas. And now I'm going to let that turquoise be more of a pure form of turquoise with less phthalo blue blended with it. And I'm going to just keep working my way up the canvas. And I'm going to go up pretty far here with the turquoise. On the left and right sides, I probably have about 2-3 inches left of blank space at the top, and of course it dips down pretty low here. But definitely a lot of turquoise in this, especially since the next step we're going to be adding white into it. So we want a nice good chunk of turquoise in this water painting. When you've gone up pretty far with this turquoise, you're going to dip your brush in the titanium white. So no rinsing. I haven't rinsed my brush at all, actually. I'm going to grab titanium white and the turquoise and kind of mix it a little bit on my palette here to make a light kind of a medium shade of turquoise here. We're still doing a gradient, so our turquoise is not that light yet, but there's some white in it to give it indication that it's now starting to get light. So I'm going to blend in that turquoise color with the pure turquoise color, so it's blending in and wet on wet, and I'm still going in curved direction. And as I load my brush back onto the palette, so I just grab a little bit of white and turquoise to get that medium shade of turquoise. So I'm continuing the same direction, the same curved direction, brushing over my strokes to get the colors to blend. And as you start working your way closer to the top part of the canvas, you're going to need to add more white. So we're going to gradually get that turquoise to be lighter by adding more white to the paint. Um, and if you, so I did that, I dipped my brush in the water just to get it to flow a little bit more. My paint was starting to feel a little bit dry and wanted that to flow a little bit more. So you can do that. Just be careful not to use too much water because it gets kind of drippy. So you're going to continue to do that. Keep adding more white as you work your way up. Since we have not rinsed our brush yet, you might have little traces, like if you look really closely right there in the middle, little traces of phthalo blue, that just the residual left on the brush at this point. And that's okay. It gives the color some variation and interest, and it really doesn't affect the painting. Just a few streaks of phthalo blue looks, it should be fine. So you see me, I go back over my strokes constantly. That's just what I do to blend the colors. You just work the colors on the canvas. You brush over them to mix the colors together, and you just keep gradually adding as you work your way up, but then you also still go down. So when you're going up, but you still brush downwards too to get the colors to blend back. Okay, so at this point, you should be, we're not going for a pure white up there. It should just be a very, very light turquoise. So right there in the middle is our lightest part of the painting. Actually, we're going to do some sun rays that are going through the water. Those will be a white, a pure white in color. So I'm just going to kind of stroke the curved lines here, just work my way back down, blend it back one more time, then rinse my brush off, and we're going to do the sun rays that I was talking about. And we're going to be using a number 12 flat brush. So it's a flat brush, but smaller, and titanium white. So here's my number 12. I'm going to dip it in the water, and actually I want this to be kind of watery. I'm going to water down my titanium white to kind of an ink consistency. So I just used the water that was on my brush from dipping it in the water, and I just kind of swished it onto the palette. And I'm going to use the side of the brush, and I'm going to do these diagonal streaky lines. So I'm pressing kind of firm at first, and I'm letting go of the brush as I go down. So pressing firm and then let go as you go down. And we're doing rays, so they're all going diagonal and meeting a point. So that middle point is where they all start, and then they kind of fade out as you go down. Okay, and I'm going to kind of vary some of these lines. Some are a little bit longer than the others, some are shorter. And I was using the side of the brush. I'm going to use kind of press a little bit firmer, use almost the full width of the brush to make some of my rays kind of thicker. But notice there's not a lot of white on my brush. This white is translucent. It's kind of dry and feathery. So it should not be a pure white. It should be a translucent, light, not so bold and bright kind of white. Okay, so this next step we're going to do the dark blue coral that's kind of hidden. You don't really notice it in this painting, but it is part of the painting. And I'm going to use a number 4 round brush and the color phthalo blue. So all I'm going to do at the very bottom is paint these sort of branch, sort of wavy lines that kind of branch out. We don't know if this is coral or seaweed. I haven't really defined it myself, but I'm doing these kind of wiggly lines that are branching out using that round brush. And that phthalo should show up because I only did one coat of phthalo on the bottom of that background, and doing this phthalo on top, it's like the second coat, it will show up. If it doesn't, you can add a little tiny drop, like literally one drop of Mars Black into the phthalo, and it'll make your phthalo blue a tad darker so that you can see that dark seaweed. So I'm also making them a little bit higher on the left and right sides, and they kind of curve down just because the whole layout of the curves in the ocean, it kind of curves that way. So I made my seaweed do the same. And if you need to get this phthalo to flow a little bit more, swish your brush in the water a little bit and swish it around on the palette so that it waters down just a tad. That helps it flow. And this video is speeding up a little bit here, but I'm zooming in to show you kind of what I'm doing here. It's just the simple wiggly line seaweed that I'm doing. And I'm going to go silent here as I finish this step. Okay, that is it for the entire background, and we need to wait for everything to dry before we can draw our angelfish. So mine is dry now, and so let me show you there's a lot of options you can do. I did one sort of small painting with the 3 angelfish, but I also did another one with, there's 2 and they're both facing each other. So you can kind of decide for yourself. I mean, definitely copy me if that's what you want to do. But if you want to be kind of creative with this, because this is like an ocean picture and there's so many things that you can do here. But I'm going to do the 3 angelfish, and actually I'm not transferring them with graphite paper. I am going to just draw them out with chalk here because that's what I'm doing. I didn't have white graphite paper on hand when I was doing this demonstration, but if you're going to transfer, I recommend using white graphite paper because the background is kind of dark and you'll need to see the drawing. So the angelfish are actually they're very simple to draw, so definitely you can try to freehand it too with the piece of chalk. The nice thing about the chalk is that it erases very easily on the canvas. So I always start with the head part, kind of the nose. The nose kind of sticks out and then it kind of curves up, and the top of the tail makes a point and it kind of curves down and out. And then we have that tail that kind of curves out too. Then the stripes, there's 3 lines that I did for the stripes. So with the traceables that I have, you're welcome to enlarge them. You can keep them the same size. You can cut the fish out and you can trace it on the canvas. That's another option you can do if you don't want to do the graphite paper. And then you can also add other things. This would be super fun if you're doing it with your kids. You can have them paint starfish and a clownfish, a Finding Nemo fish. So there's lots of different sea creatures you can do. You can go look for Google images and find a traceable for different kinds of fish, and you can print that out and you can paint that on your canvas, draw it on your canvas. So okay, this next step, what I'm doing with the round brush, I'm going to white out the fish. So if I tried painting them in right now, there's too much blue right there, and I want to white that out so that I get my fish to be nice and bright. So all I'm doing here is with the round brush, and it doesn't have to be solid. You see me kind of dipping my brush in the water a little bit there, but just to get a nice kind of primed layer of white so that most of that blue is blocked out. And also, because you're using this round brush, you can really define the shape of that fish. There's a lot of curved lines. The tails go to a point so that when you paint the white, get that tail to go to a nice point and really define the lines. For the bigger areas, you could switch to a flat brush if needed, because that round brush might take a long time to fill it all in. So I switched to that number 12 just to get that big middle area filled in. And then if there's any chalk lines still showing, you can get a wet paintbrush and kind of erase that, or you can wait until it's dry if you're kind of hesitant to erase it now. Okay, I'm going to go in and white out the other fish. This is going to speed up just a little bit here. And I'm also going to go silent because I'm doing the exact same thing using that round brush, making sure that I'm really defining the shape of that fish, making sure my tail fins go to a nice point, and getting my chalk line to erase very carefully with a wet brush. Okay, so I have my fish whited out and I'm going to do the stripes. So I loaded my palette with Mars Black and I'm going to use that brown brush. I'm going to swish some water into that Mars Black to make it kind of an ink consistency so that Mars Black will flow, not drippy, but flowy. And I'm going to start with the tail. So I'm going to do the larger fish and the tail is black. So using that round brush really helps here, especially since we've got to get that point on the tip of the tail. So for the stripes, I'm just going to kind of estimate here and do two sort of wavy lines, and then I'm going to fill that area in with the black. And then I actually grabbed my my flat brush because it's a large area, so that I'm using that number 12 flat brush. So I'm just kind of filling it in. And let's let that black kind of go up into this top tail a little bit. Actually, let's let it go all the way that way. Okay. That flat brush also helps to get the little points on the tips of the tails too if you use the side of the brush. So I'm going to do another stripe, and this stripe is not going to be as thick. It's going to be a thinner stripe, and it's going to be close to the head. So I'll just kind of do a thick, or not a thick, kind of a thin wavy line. And let's make that black go up. And then for the eye, I'm just going to do a dot for now. Later, we'll go back in and add a little white dot on the inside of that black dot, but we cannot do that now because that black needs to dry first. So just a nice black dot for the eye, super easy. Definitely simplifying these angelfish. There's not a ton of details in them. And then I'm going back in with my round brush just to fill in some areas. Okay, on to the next angelfish. And I'm going to start with the tail. And for the stripe, I'm just going to pick a spot that is kind of close to the tail, kind of not. Just kind of estimate where that stripe is going to be. It doesn't really have a specific spot. Just start anywhere where there's a gap between the tail and the next stripe. And then same with the second stripe, just kind of pick a spot to do this stripe, making sure that you leave enough space for the head where the eye is going to be. And I'm going to jump up here and do the top fish, starting with the tail and then the two stripes. And I'm going to do the eyes. So the next color I'm going to load on my palette is primary yellow, and I want to make sure I get that black rinsed off that brush all the way. And actually, ideally, that black should be dry on the canvas. The black stripes should be dry because you don't want your yellow running into the black and getting it all mixed up. And actually, I went ahead and switched out my water here so I can get all that black out of that water. So nice fresh water here because we have this very light color that we don't want the black to mix into. So this is the yellow, this is primary yellow, and I'm using the round brush and I'm going to paint the yellow parts of the fish. So this back part where all that white is that we see behind that stripe, I am going to paint it yellow. I'm going to go up into the fin here. Just be really careful because my black isn't dry, so there's a little bit that's running into it right there with the yellow. Kind of a happy accident. It makes it look like there's a little bit of shading with the black and yellow. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint this area, the gap between those two black stripes. That is also going to be painted yellow. Okay, and then I'm gonna do the same thing to the next fish. So the yellow in the back and the middle, but leaving the face area white. Okay, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing to the little fish up on the top. I'm going to go in and add a little second coat to the um, head area of this fish with the titanium white. And then, so for the eyes, all I'm doing is doing a white dot on the black that's dry. So we got that black circle with a white dot. And then I am going to use the black to make a mouth line on the fish. Kind of a thick line at the top of that little fish, but I'll go ahead and fix it later. So just a line to represent the mouth. Making it real simple here. And then I'm just going to take that black and kind of add it to my stripes there a little bit. So this next step is fun. We're going to paint bubbles, and I'm going to use the round brush, the number 4 round, titanium white, and all I'm going to do is paint circles. So I'm going to do circles of varied sizes. So the circles are kind of larger and get kind of smaller as they go up. Actually, I wasn't really following any pattern here. So some large bubbles, some small bubbles, and then do the little highlight line on the side of the bubble. Then I got a little bit fancy here with that titanium white and the round brush, and I'm just doing some light kind of wavy lines extending from the bottom parts of the angelfish tails. I'm doing a little bit of white kind of on the edge of the black, and I'm going to fix that mouth there so it's not so thick. And next I'm going to go in and paint some more bubbles because bubbles are fun. For this final step, I painted some pink coral on the bottom with the colors medium magenta, primary red, and a little bit of titanium white. So to get that kind of hot pink color, I'm using the primary red, medium magenta, and also the number 4 round brush, and I'm swirling in both the medium magenta and primary red. So essentially double loading my brush in both of those colors and doing the same thing I did with the phthalo blue coral that's way in the background. But these are kind of larger. They're obviously in the foreground because they're brighter, and they may even overlap the fish that's on the bottom because they're kind of in front. So this gives your painting a nice little pop with the pink and a little bit of depth too. And then so I'm going to do that, and then also get the corals kind of lower on the bottom because it curves. And also I did mention that I'm dipping my brush in a little bit of titanium white. That gets it to be kind of lighter, brighter, show up against that dark part. Just a tiny bit of titanium white, otherwise it'll turn to a very light pink color, and going for the hot pink color here. So I am going to speed this video up just a bit. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just adding more coats to my coral, a little bit of white in some areas to make it brighter in some areas, but that's all I'm doing is the coral. And I'm going to go silent here for just a bit. As a final touch to this painting, I'm going to do some white dots on the bottom coming up from the bottom within the coral to represent little tiny bubbles. And so this is titanium white, and I'm going to use the back of my paintbrush. So just basically the handle, the back part of the paintbrush, just stamping the little white dots, and they are going up little lines of dots that are kind of swirling up from the bottom within the coral area. And then maybe there's a few little clusters of little bubbles kind of in coming out of the fish's mouth or just in random areas. And that is it for this painting. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful and sparked your creativity for painting an underwater ocean scene. Thank you for watching. Really quick, so I'm just doing these random white little highlight lines. Don't know if I like them or not. I think I ended up painting over them after this video, but just an added step. Anyway, thank you for watching this How to Paint an Under the Sea Angelfish acrylic painting tutorial.